Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday evening if you're joining me live. Welcome to Explore Washington State. I'm excited for these wines. I'm excited to talk to you about this region. It's to be really upfront to start. It's not a place that I drink a lot of personally. And then when I do taste them, I kind of remember how great they are. So I've been psyching myself up and getting myself like really giddy excited. So we're in for a treat. If you haven't had a moment to fill out the poll before we get started, it would be wonderful if you would do that so that I have a sense of kind of how frequently are people drinking Washington State wines. When you are drinking them, which ones are you choosing? It looks like we have a nice, it's like a really funny mix of like frequently and rarely are almost even. And then we have a little group of nevers. And I'm curious for those of you who answered never, if you could drop it in the chat. Is that because you don't think you like them, or you know you don't like them, or you just haven't had them? I'm just kind of curious. You're here tonight, so I figure you're open to trying them. I'm just curious why never? Just haven't had them. Okay, I kind of figured that was the answer. Never, because it's never crossed our minds. Okay, cool. And you just haven't had them. Okay, great. It's not like an aversion thing. So that's great. And then it looks like we definitely have a red wine crowd here tonight, which I fully expected. So it looks like it's going to be a really fun mix. And thank you to everyone who kind of answered the opening question of what are you looking forward to doing once the weather gets warm. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of drinking outside with friends. And that would be my answer too. So that's great. Oh, Katie, you're moving to Washington? I mean, I'm happy for you. There's a cycle at Table Wine right now. We've been open for 5 years. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it feels like a lot of our some like key core customers are finishing graduate school and moving. And I had like a couple different people tell me that they're moving sometime this year. And I'm just like, that's great for you. Oh, you got tenure? That's super cool. I'm really excited for you. But I want you to, or a tenure track. I suppose they don't have tenure yet. But anyway, that's the life of the business. For those of you who aren't moving, great. We can go travel to the Pacific Northwest, as some of you already want to. So yes, if you have not joined us for class before, and you are watching us live, we use the chat a lot. So please chime in. Tonight's class, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of wine in this area, a little bit of kind of high level information, and then we'll get to drinking of the 3 wines. If you want some wine in your glass while I kind of get us kicked off and started, pour yourself a little Chardonnay if you have it. So pour yourselves a little white if you want something to drink, and I'm going to chat at you for a little bit. Side note, I have been doing virtual private tastings for people throughout the pandemic, which are really wonderful. But I use Google Meet for those because so that I can see the people and so that they can visit with each other, because often it's for like a birthday or just a celebration or something. And I understand that people want to visit with one another. And so I just had one a couple nights ago, and it was great. And I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. But there was that kind of like technological roadblocks to getting started. And one of the people, the organizer of the event, said, "Oh, I bet this is why you do your classes like a webinar." So that's just not at the beginning of every class. And it's actually not why I chose this format, but it is a nice benefit. I also said that you guys can all be eating your dinners and shoving your mouths full of food if you so desire. You can be in your pajamas. You can do whatever. So you could be cooking dinner and just hear us. Oh, hey, Amy. So it was Amy who said that. And I was like, that is a kind of a nice added bonus. It's not the driver of this format, but if you aren't familiar with the way that we run classes, now you can wear whatever the hell you want because nobody else is going to see you. So please do use the chat. So with that, let's dive in and talk about Washington State. It sounds like some of you really know it and already know you love it, and some of you are not as familiar with it, which is a really lovely mix. So if you are on the super familiar side, or you've traveled there, maybe even lived there, something like that, feel free to chime in as it comes up. So a little bit about wine in Washington State. Oh, thanks. Complimenting my cardigan color. Thank you. I appreciate that. I always thought I couldn't pull off yellow, but damn it, I like it. Thank you. Yeah. Voodoo Donuts, that's what I hear, right? That's what I know. That's what I know about the Pacific Northwest. So history of wine here. So wine first kind of made it to this area in the 1850s. Coming from German and Italian immigrants as they kind of finally made their way to the West. They brought with them a love of wine and a desire to kind of be making it in whatever quantities that might be, mostly for home consumption, not really for commercial wine purposes. It was more about, I come from Germany. I know that I really want Riesling. I'm going to bring some plantings and grow it. And lo and behold, here's Riesling in Washington State. So it really was kind of a small production. And then Washington was one of the first states to adopt prohibition, like even before it became law. They were one of the first states to outlaw alcohol. So they were really on the early train of stopping alcohol consumption. And by like about 1917, they'd ripped up almost all of the vines. So there really weren't a lot of vines left, which left them then after Prohibition, like with nothing. In other parts of our country, the Catholics have a larger influence. Let's say in California, they have a larger influence. So even though Prohibition obviously affected everywhere, grapes were still grown for sacramental wine. And so there were vines, but in Washington, even though it is Germanic and Italian, apparently that was not the case in Washington. So vines were pulled up. So it took quite a while for them to start kind of growing grapes again. And then when their focus was on these really super sweet fortified wines, kind of made in the style of port, but with non-wine grapes. So kind of similar to the kind of grapes that we can grow here in Wisconsin, more kind of the cold hardy grapes. So it was only through some scientists in the in the 60s at Washington State who were like, hey, you know what? Let's bring real wine back. Let's bring back these vines and see what we can do and see if they will grow here. So it's really all because of them. And so then after that, you kind of started to see some commercial wineries pop up in the late 60s, and the wine industry in the area grew through the 60s and up to, through the 60s and the 80s. It was never large. It was never like a really big thing. But one of the grapes that grows well in Washington that we're actually not going to taste tonight is Merlot. It's a grape that grows super well because of the climate and the soil. And for Washington State, that was lovely because in the 1990s, all people wanted to drink was Merlot. There couldn't be enough Merlot in the world to make people happy. And so the popularity of that grape really boosted the Washington wine industry. So then kind of from the 1990s moving forward, it's become more prominent. It's definitely an important industry to the state, but it's not California. Right, I guess is really the story with the rest of the United States outside of California is, well, you're not California. Wineries now are focusing on a wider variety of grapes. There really was kind of this like little tiny handful of grapes that Washington State knew that it could do well. And there wasn't a lot of experimentation. As climate is changing there, as things are getting warmer and drier, they're having to explore other grape varieties. So that's kind of the story with wine in Washington State. A few just like little bit important fundamental information. Washington is second behind California in terms of wine production here in the US, but it's like so much lower than California. So I don't remember what the stat is, but like if California were its own country, it would be something like, I want to say like the 7th highest producing wine country if it were treated separately. Something like that. Within the state of Washington, there are 14 AVAs. So those are these little subregions. I'm going to show you a map in just a second. There are 14 little subregions that say the grapes have to come from these specific places. 10 of those 14 are within one larger AVA called the Columbia Valley. So there are a few outliers, and then really everything else is in the eastern part of the state within the Columbia Valley. Wine in Washington is primarily red. It's just under 2/3 red, with then like the other third white. There's like a tiny little bit of rosé and sparkling coming out of Washington right now, but for the most part, it's kind of still really classic red and then white. The key varietals, just so you guys kind of know what you're getting into when you travel out there, or you know what you kind of can expect. The Germanic influence is very real. So the Riesling is the, I believe it's the most widely grown white grape in Washington state, with Chard close behind it, Sauv Blanc and other Bordeaux varietals, and then some Pinot Gris. So that's one of the grapes that you're kind of seeing more than you used to. Pinot Gris does very well in Oregon, and so that's kind of starting to grow in Washington. Key red varietals, it's an interesting mix of Bordeaux and Rhone varietals. So it's definitely a Cabernet Sauvignon world. But if you ask the winemakers what they think their area is best at, what grapes that like Washington should be known for, it's Syrah and Merlot. I don't think you're ever going to meet a Washington winemaker who's who actually like loves their cab the most. They might pay their bills with their cab, and they're definitely very proud of their cabs, but there's something about the Syrah and Merlot in this area that they love. And then other Bordeaux varietals filling out the mix, like Cab Franc and things like that. One thing I'll mention about Riesling, well, I'm going to mention two things about Riesling. One, I don't know how many of you know Chateau Saint Michel, but Chateau Saint Michel is a very massive winery. They sell a lot of wine, and they are single-handedly responsible for the fact that Riesling is such a major varietal. They grow so much damn Riesling. They buy so much Riesling, grow and buy grapes. So it is definitely skewed for this like one wine label, which is kind of amazing. And then the other thing I'm going to mention is that when I was picking the 3 wines for tonight, if we were in person, some of you have taken classes with me before in person and some of you haven't. If we were in person, I'd be pouring 6 wines, and I would definitely make you drink things that you would not normally pick. So you could bet your bippy that I'd be pouring you Riesling. But it's like too much to have, 6 bottles of wine. Maybe you're by yourself, or maybe it's 2 of you at home or whatever. Like, it's a lot of wine. It's too much to spend, right? So I narrow things down for the virtual classes. And so I pick 3, and I really thought long and hard between Riesling and Chardonnay, which white is going to scare more people. And I figured if I picked Riesling, most of you wouldn't buy it. I figured you'd be like, no, I know I don't like Riesling. I don't want to try it. So I went with Chardonnay. We did have some people who didn't take me up on the encouragement to buy the white wine because, you never know what you might like, and you might try something that you think you don't like, and turns out you enjoy it. But for most of you, I will say most of you came along on the ride, so I appreciate that. So that's my piece about Riesling. And I'm seeing that the Seattle airport has a shrine to Chateau Saint Michel. I mean, I'm sure they are so responsible for wine tourism. Absolutely. Here's the map. I'm happy to come back to it anytime as we kind of go through. So you can kind of see the Columbia Valley is that whole big gray region on the right. And then it has all of these little sub-AVAs. So let's do it. Any questions about any of that fundamental info before we get started on wine? I'll pause. I'll pour myself some Chard, and I'll wait for you guys to ask questions if you have them. Okay. Everybody's being quiet. I'm going to believe you. Okay. So I would have loved to start with the big Columbia Valley and then gotten down to the sub AVAs. But hence we are going to start with white wine and then move to red wine because your palates are going to be happier with that. Oh, Katja and Drew are asking climate wise. So interesting things about the climate in Washington State is actually cooler because of it's more northern. So it does, well, no, sorry, not cooler. Warmer in certain parts because it doesn't have the Pacific, because it is so far east. And it's for those of you who haven't been out there, the eastern part of Washington, and I have a hard time remembering this fact, like the eastern half of Washington is not our rainy, lush green Seattle. It is super, super deserty. We'll talk about rainfall when it comes to our last wine. Very, very, very little rain out there. So it is high desert is what it is referred to. And then the question about anything about the mountainous regions of Washington that help hinder grape growth. So the soil, grapes grow, wine is best when grapes have to struggle. Grapes don't do well. Wine grapes don't do well in super dense, nutrient rich soil. They don't taste good. Like you wouldn't grow grapes in Iowa. It doesn't grow well. So grapes do like alluvial soil. They do like to be close to a riverbed, but not necessarily on the shores of the river. So they do. So the dry mountainous terrain is actually exactly kind of what grapes want. But it can be really hot out there, and that's not necessarily what grapes want. A few years back now at this point, I had a winemaker visiting me during harvest. It was like in September. I don't know how he was visiting me during harvest. It was bizarre, but he was in the shop and he was telling me that it had been 120 that day, the day before, and then the next day was supposed to be in the 120s. And that's dangerous temperatures. So it's challenging. It's super, super challenging to figure out how to handle climate change there. Let's talk about the Waluka Slope, y'all. So Waluka Slope is really relatively new. It's only 5 years old. It was just founded in 2016. And so it's an AVA within the Columbia Valley AVA. And it only has about 20 vineyards in it. There are just a handful of wineries. The winery that we're drinking is Christopher Michael, and they're actually in Oregon, but they are buying grapes from the Waluka Slope to make this wine. What Waluka Slope wines are known for, there's a little bit, it's a little bit greener in this area than it is in certain other parts of the Columbia Valley. So the grapes get a little bit riper. So the wines from this area are known for being full in body and really ripe. And then they kind of have these like bold fruit flavors. So they would be great for things like blind tasting. Some of you joined me for blind tasting not too long ago, because they're very prominent and obvious kind of things, or not necessarily even blind tasting, but like teaching yourself, this is what Cabernet can taste like when it's from a warm climate. Key grapes, I'm not going to keep listing, or I'm not going to say them. They're on the screen. It's like kind of the same mix everywhere we go. There are some certain variation or variances, but we can kind of leave it at that. It's Cab, it's Chard, it's Riesling. So the food pairings that I have listed there are for this specific wine. So I'm going to now make myself big and tell me what you think of the wine. Chardonnay from Washington State, Waluka Slope specifically, but also just Washington State in general, does tend to be a little bit of a departure from California. So thank you for coming on the journey with me, because it's not exactly your Napa or your Sonoma Chard. While still definitely being Chardonnay-like, right? I don't think there's anything like, oh, that doesn't taste like any Chardonnay I've ever had before. It's really round, really full. A little bit of butter, right? A little bit of creaminess to it. Yeah. Yay. I'm glad folks are enjoying it. Yeah. Fruity, a little herbal. Yeah. I totally agree. Does butter imply oak something? Not necessarily. So butter can come from a process during fermentation that's called malolactic fermentation. So it's where the malic acid, which is the green apple flavors, turn into lactic acid, which are the cream flavors. So wines that have any sort of like really any dairy, anything reminiscent of dairy, be that butter or cream or like lemon curd or custard or any of those kinds of things. It can just be straight up because of the malolactic fermentation. It can also be from oak treatment. So it doesn't have to be hand in hand. Heather and Tegan are surprised. They're in a good way. Chard isn't your fave and you love this. That's great. Minty on the nose. I love that. I totally agree with you. It definitely has that mintiness to it. And Nikki's comment about thinking, you know, that they don't like oaky or buttery Chardonnay. I would not put this in the oaky category. So this is aged in pretty neutral barrels. So it's not coming at you with buttered popcorn. I would definitely say that it's much, much more subtle. For me, it's more like curd. Like it's more like lemon curd. It's more like cream. So if you told me that you didn't want an oaky Chardonnay, but you weren't completely like, I need it to be stainless steel and all fruit, this actually might be something that I would recommend. So, but if somebody said like, I don't want any hint of any of that, then I probably would steer clear of this because it does have that and it feels that way. I want to share with you guys a really pretty picture of the Waluka Slope. Somebody mentioned that it's a beautiful area. Just like gorgeous river, right? It's just so pretty. So a little picture for you. Are there folks out there who are not enjoying it? Kristen, I'm glad to hear that you say that you like this one. I am like super smelling marshmallow. I don't know if I'm like, I hope my sniffer's not off for all of our sakes. I hope that I'm not, I don't know, having one of those bad days of smelling. Oh, funny. Well, I've got it. It's not bad. Hey, you know what? I'll take it's not bad. It's not bad is, you know, better than, so I'll take it. I'll take it. Awesome, Lauren. Yeah. And you can, you know, you can always, I don't know if you know this or others know this, these classes are available pretty much as soon as class ends. It then is available at the same link ad infinitum. So you can always come back and watch it if you are so inclined. You don't have to watch it or you don't have to take notes. You can like drink your cab and then come back. So, oh yay, somebody hears me on the marshmallow. I'm not all by myself. And that's one of those things, I should share this. That is one of those things that while when I am tasting, I might write down in my own notes, but I would rarely put that on the tag or the tasting notes online because I think that people are going to see the word marshmallow, they're going to think sweet, and they're going to think, I don't want that wine, right? And I think that like, we're all tasting this wine. I can verify that the winery has info on their tech sheet about how much sugar's in the wine. This is not a sweet wine. There are some sugar, there's some residual sugar here, but it's not sweet. And so I like always, anytime I taste or smell something that has like a sweet, that is sweet in and of itself, I get hesitant to share that with folks because I don't want people to put up the sweet stop sign, as so many folks do. Kristen or Patty, somebody in their household is asking that the back label mentions supple tannins, which I noticed that they do, and how to kind of detect that, because it's not as obvious in reds, which we will get to tannin land in just a little bit. So I mean, how to taste them, how to perceive them. I would say like if on the finish you can, I mean, I can detect it where my tongue is a little bit dry and kind of a little lip smacky in not a tart way, but in an actual drying kind of way. I think you can pick up on it. It's not something that I would talk to folks about because I do think that it's a little challenging for people. And it doesn't, sorry if I'm like trying to think about how I would word this the best. To me, it feels a bit like a roadblock to tell people on your, whatever this is, like $14 or $15 bottle of Chardonnay, maybe it's even less expensive than that. Hey, you're supposed to be picking up on tannins with this wine. That's challenging because then if the person doesn't get it, it can feel a little like, am I missing something? Do I not get wine? Do I not get this wine? So that's not something that I would focus on, not because it's not there and not because I can't pick it up, but it just feels like a hindrance. I hope that makes sense as an answer. Okay, cool. And I know that you were asking, how do you perceive it? I mean, I say like, we can talk offline, as corporate America says. Let's talk offline about that. God, I'm really so glad I don't have that kind of job anymore. Sorry for those of you who do. I'm sorry if you're the kind of person who says talk offline. What was the question? The bottle label is interesting, painted, and then having a sticker. Oh yeah, it is. It's quite pretty, right? It's quite, so Christopher Michael is owned by the folks who own Union Wine Company, and they are the Underwood wine folks. I don't know if all of you know who Underwood is, but they do the cans. They do really awesome canned wine. So they know how to make a nice package, right? It's pretty. It's pretty. And Katya and Drew are asking, would the tannins be coming from the oak or skin contact? It probably is a slight extended skin contact situation because they're using neutral barrels. So most likely the tannins would be coming from the way that they are fermenting rather than the aging process. But I can't say that 100% for sure. Other questions, thoughts, questions about Waluka Slope or Chardonnay from Washington State? I tasted some, it was kind of poor timing, unfortunately, but a new winery that just came available into the market, actually called Luke, which are all Waluka Slope wines. And I tasted 3 reds from them yesterday, Merlot, Cab, and a red blend. And they were really lovely. So we will probably have those in the shop within a few weeks. So if it's something that's of interest to you, for all of you red wine lovers, if you want to kind of get to know Waluka Slope a little bit more, those will be on the shelf sometime soon. Matt, I say bravo for convenience. My husband and I are huge fans of portmanteaus, and so well done. I'm always a fan. Questions? We ready? We ready to move on? Oh, and I will say, I did have it up there, but I'll bring it back up just for a hot second because y'all are going to have open bottles of Chardonnay now. And in case you're wondering, what do I do with this? I would highly recommend, now that you can kind of see the body and the creaminess of it, if you are meat eaters, roast a whole chicken and it's going to be absolutely fantastic with that. Or you could do salmon, really of kind of any preparation would be great. Something like this that has this fruit is also fun if you are having brunch. So if you wake up on Saturday morning and want to make some waffles and have some fruit or something, it would be really great with that. And shards in this style work super nicely with your like bounty of cheese, like your cheese board that has all sorts of things on it. It has that structure for some aged cheddars, but it has enough fruit and acidity for your soft cheeses. So it's like a really kind of friendly food wine, which not all Chardonnays are. And so this one would fall into that category. So you can be a little adventurous in what you're doing. All right. If there are no questions, we're going to move on to Columbia Valley. So that is, again, to remind you, that's kind of like the big AVA that covers most of the wine that you're ever going to be drinking from Washington State. So it was one of the original AVAs. AVA, so that's the American Viticultural Area. So that's meaning these different, I can bring up the slide again. These different areas within, so here in the United States, we call them AVAs, meaning that the grapes have to come from these specific places to have the place listed on the label. So, yeah, in France, they're called AOCs. In Italy, they're called DOCs. Each country kind of has its own lingo, but they all kind of mean the same thing. Grapes come from this specific place. Different regions and different countries have different governing principles. Sometimes it has to be, pardon me, in the United States, it's at 75% or more. 80% or more of the grape from that place. Oh my God, can I speak? 80% or more of that varietal have to come from that place to have the varietal listed. So if it says Syrah, it has to be at least 80% Syrah on it. If it says Columbia Valley, it has to be at least 80% Columbia Valley fruit to have Columbia Valley on it. So Columbia Valley makes up, it's like just over a third of actual land mass in Washington. And it's almost all of the wine production. So it's 99% of the wine production. So if you'll remember, there were 14 AVAs. One of those 14 is Columbia Valley. And then 10 more are within Columbia Valley. So then there are just the 3 little outliers. Wines from this area, it's a big area. It's hard to kind of make a big generalization, but generally speaking, wines from this area are known for having really pure kind of fruit flavors and aromas. They are really like, yes, that's that fruit. And what is referred to as typicity, meaning Syrah from this area tastes like Syrah. It tastes like the grape is supposed to taste. It doesn't show, anything kind of like odd or, those, Syrahs from there can be kind of weird or anything like that. They're kind of like very varietally correct. And so they can be great for learning. They're great for learning. If you want to get to know a grape, if you want to get to know what it can taste like, Columbia Valley fruit is really a great way to go. This would be where Chateau Saint Michelle makes all of their wine. So Riesling is the big player here, but then our red friends are super, super important. Feel free to start drinking Syrah if you haven't already. From a food pairing standpoint, something hearty, something with a little spice can be nice. So you can go a lot of different directions with this Syrah because it does have some fruit, but it also has some tannins to it. So taste, tell me what you think. I'm gonna show you a picture of the Columbia Valley. It's desert, you know? Yeah. Nathan's saying that it screams Washington to you. I agree. I feel like it, if you know Washington wines, you'll know what that means. And if you're like, I don't know why he would say that. What does that mean? Smell this, remember this wine, and kind of, you know, think of it later. Smells earthy and kind of French. Kristen and Patty, I'm going to tell you right now, as you're smelling, in a wine class a while ago, some of us were talking about wines that smell like candy cigarettes and bubblegum. And this to me is one of those wines. It really smells like the white powder on really cheap bubblegum, like bazooka. Like it has that bazooka powder smell or candy cigarette smell. Totes, right? And I'm not doing this to be pretentious. I'm doing this to say, like, think about how weird memories you might have. So that's all I'm doing. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Like like the gum in Halloween variety packs. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Lauren's saying, about the flavor color wheel. So, yeah, I actually I have it here. This book, Wine Folly, if you don't know it, they have an amazing website. And the founder is a graphic designer and I believe she's a master sommelier, or maybe just a som, but just a som, as if that's not a big deal. And in here she does have, oh my gosh, I can't find it. So for each grape, I'll just open up one. She has like a flavor and aroma wheel. And she has all of this stuff online. So it can be super helpful. At the shop, I do have a really big board it's kind of more like oh gosh, what are those called? Like thought web kind of things. I'm not super into the finite wheel idea. I like kind of more, and this kind of smells like that, and this is kind of related, so you can kind of jog your memory as you're tasting, because it can be kind of hard. Mind maps, thank you. Yes, like when you're smelling a wine, and if I tell you that I think it smells like bubble gum, you're all like, yeah. But if I wasn't here, or if you're smelling it on your own, you might not get there. So, Kelly and Chris say baby aspirin at first smell. Yeah, I hear you. For me, I hate that. I hate baby aspirin. I hate that. I mean, not that I enjoy this cheap bubble gum that we were discussing, but that's for such a negative thing that I'm like, ooh, I try not to, I try not to remind myself of there. So, It's super rich. Matt is not enjoying, or he likes the other one better, and you're having Chinese food. That would make sense. I would say that makes sense to me, that probably the Chard is a little more Chinese food friendly. It's quite concentrated, and there are so many, no one's saying it. I mean, Nikki's saying bitter. There's so many more tannins than I think people are expecting. When people think of New World Syrah, Shiraz, something like that, they want all the juicy fruit and those no tannins. And that's not this. It's so interesting. So you guys are not loving this. Which, as I always say, is perfectly fine. I don't make the wine, and so it's okay. What I was going to say, I'm glad to see that somebody likes it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Super big difference. Super, super big difference between this and California, or this and Australia, something like it. It's so interesting. Somebody's saying not a big fan because it's leathery, and then other people are saying, yeah, we love it because it's leathery, right? And I mean, I think that's that's the deal. That's what makes the world go round. There's no telling you what you can or what you do and do not like. If you are more leather, power to you. This feels like we're going into not PG territory, y'all. Keep it somewhat clean. What was I going to say? If you are not loving this and you are now like, holy buckets, I have an open bottle of a tannic red wine that I don't particularly love, what do? Here are things you can do. You can just leave the bottle as it is right now with the cork out and just kind of let it breathe, and come revisit it around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Revisit it and see if you like it anymore. If you're like, well, I was planning on having this with dinner, go ahead and aerate it. Go ahead and decant it. That can mean that you pour it into, something like something like a plastic cup, or something like a mason jar, or if you have a nice decanter, beautiful, use it. If you have an aerator, go ahead and use it. If the amount of tannins are not pleasing to you, all of that process, exposing it to more oxygen, is going to soften it up. It's going to make it taste and feel different than it currently does. For those of you who do enjoy it the way that it is, awesome. You might notice over the course of your evening, or if you don't drink it tonight and you come back to it tomorrow or the next day, you'll notice that the tannins have kind of softened out a little bit. So all hope is not lost for those of you who are not loving it. The question about why a number is larger on the label than something else is like, guys, what do you, I don't know that. I don't know that question or the answer. I have no idea. I love the comment, just nope. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Just like, no, like, I do not want to drink this wine. If you were feeling that way, I wouldn't say give up all hope on Washington State Syrah. I think that you can continue to explore them, and maybe you'll find one that you like. They're not all as structured as this. I'm going to say that for me, for an under $15 Syrah to be interesting and complex, and to not just be a total fruit bomb, is lovely. From my perspective, whether it's my go-to, that not necessarily, but like, there's a lot of beautiful wine that costs $50. It's nice to find tasty wine that's under 20. And Washington State wines, they're not California, but they're not cheap. And, often I was mentioning at the beginning that winemakers will they used to come to the shop and tell me all about their Syrah and all about their Merlot and how much they love them. And then they tell me the price point, and I'd be like, look, the average person is not interested in spending $40 on a bottle of domestic Syrah. Like, that's just not what the average person wants to drink around here. That might be what you want, or, out at your tasting room. Sure. Everybody's like, sure, let's buy it. That sounds delicious. And if that's your budget, I'm more than happy to help you and get those wines, because some of them are awesome. But sometimes I have to remind winemakers that, like, hey, the average person doesn't necessarily, plunk down that kind of cash. At least my average person. Anyway. I'm sure Amavi has a beautiful Syrah. I'm super excited for the next wine, because sometimes, we do have to go a little bit higher. Before we leave Columbia Valley, any thoughts or remaining questions? This seems to be the polarizing polarizing wine, which is just fine and dandy with me. The question of why is it so dry at the end? Those are the tannins. The tannins are drying your mouth out. And like I said, if you want to get rid of, if you're not enjoying that, if you expose it to some oxygen, you know, a hard shake into a mason jar is going to really change the wine. I don't ever recommend aerating things or decanting them right away in these classes, because I do want people to taste it, because, you know, some folks are like, yeah, man, this is all I've ever wanted. So now you've had it open, now you've tasted it, now you have definitely like a learning, like that's tannin. There that is. I can physically feel it on my tongue. Thank you, no. I would like I would like something else now, right? That is not for me. No, thank you. So yeah. Nathan's asking about one of the other Syrahs that we have, which is the Corvidae. It is not as structured as this. So the Corvidae is kind of like inky. It's like black fruit, and it kind of smells like, I mean, not that I've really ever been around a broken fountain pen, but it kind of has that ink aroma, but it's definitely softer than this. It does not have this tannic structure. Say more about structure. Structure is, oh, good. I'm glad ink makes a lot of sense. Structure is a wine term that it's not just about tannins. It's about tannin and body. And acidity. It's kind of like the whole package. And so when I'm talking about a structured wine, it's a wine that you can kind of physically feel more, versus a flabby. Does the idea of flabby make sense? Like just this, meh, like it just like covers your mouth, or, you know, something that's really super light and has no structure to it. That's just like water. But a lot of like Australian Shiraz can be boozy, super fruity, and they have no tannin, and they just kind of like fill your mouth with juice almost. I don't want to give short shrift to Walla Walla, because Walla Walla is super important. So I'm going to move us along. And I'm glad to see that some California lovers are loving this too. So that's great. So let's give Walla Walla its due. Pour yourselves some wine, if you have it. So Walla Walla is often referred to as Napa and blue jeans. They are very serious about their wine. They're very serious about their wine industry, but they're a little more chill. They're a little more farmer winemaker types, a little less corporate money types, at least for the time being. So in this area, which is also one of kind of the early forefront of the Washington AVA system, it has more it has more wineries within the AVA than any other place in Washington state. Pardon me. If you are planning a trip and you want to go, I would highly recommend that you go to Walla Walla. It's kind of like the most bang for your buck. There are lots of wineries that have tasting rooms in Seattle. If you don't feel like you want to drive to the whole eastern half of the state, if you're there for other reasons and wine is an add-on, you don't necessarily have to go all the way east. But if you're going specifically for wine, Walla Walla, like Napa, you can just kind of go and do a lot of winery visits. With the other areas, with Lucas Slope and Columbia Valley, even though Columbia Valley is very large, there's kind of like a calling card of wines that have that ABA on them. With Walla Walla, there's a lot more variance between what kind of soil there is, how much rainfall they're getting, how high it is. So it's really hard to say that there's a trademark style. Some cabs from this area are much lighter in tannin than most Cabernet Sauvignon, and others are much more tannic than most cabs. So it's not easy to say like, this is the Walla Walla style. It's more about the winery. You kind of have to start to know which wineries you like, which realistically, if you live here in Madison, which I think everybody joining us tonight is here, the way to do that is to go visit, because there is not a lot of Walla Walla wine available in Madison. So I guess you can join wine clubs and have things shipped to you, but you kind of want to know who those people are before you start just buying wine from wineries. So Unfortunately, exploring Walla Walla is tricky here because there's just not that much available in the market. The food pairings, the cassoulet suggestion actually comes straight from Amavi. They have that listed on their website. Some other suggestions, things that have umami, things that are rich, mushrooms, lamb, all sorts of good hearty fare, even though I know it's getting a little warmer. There's Walla Walla for you. So there we go. I'm going to make myself big. Oh, I see the table wine tour 2022. We'll see about that. I think, I have friends who've been asking me if I would ever do that. And I think if I ever did it, y'all, it would be to Paso. I think we'd start with California, which I know some of you are probably very heavy here. But I don't know that will ever happen because it's hard as a business owner. El Paso? No, Paso Robles in California. I'm not going to Texas for wine. Yeah, Kristen and Patty are pointing out that Wine Folly, the book that I showed you earlier, they have a really great email list, and they today, the email was about, they have like these new region guides, and today's email was about Walla Walla, which I just loved. Like, I was like, look at that, it's meant to be. So, what do y'all think of the cab? I know it is. It's so serendipitous. It's just beautiful. It's true, New Mexico has a wine scene. Baja California has a wine scene, and Baja Mexico. Crazy things are happening out there. That's just beautiful. Nikki's saying that it still has tannin like the Syrah, but they're more part of the wine experience. I would agree. I think the wine speak way of kind of talking about that is that these tannins are more integrated. They're not as like with the Ridgecrest, I would say they're kind of like upfront tannins or, noticeable or something like that. Whereas this is, they're kind of more part of the package. I agree with you. It's a moment where we got to be honest, guys, is that this is $14 and this is $34. Yeah, not all wines are created equal, right? Ridgecrest is the second label of a winery called Clar that makes wines more similar to Amavi in that kind of price range and style, and Ridgecrest is their entry level. So yeah. So folks are saying that they feel smooth. I agree. Round, but some acidity, a little cedar. Yeah, I'm getting a little vanilla, like way on the finish. To the person who asked if you should be spitting, absolutely not. Oh my God, no. You should be drinking wine and enjoying it. I am working. You are not. So you should drink up as much as you want. You can pour yourself, not to the total tippy top, because it is nice to be able to smell the wine, but you do you, right? No, I spit because I have to keep talking. And if I had full glasses of wine, what would this class even be? I don't even know where we would be. Let's see what other folks are saying. So Alexis is saying that they would fail at blind tasting these. That's so interesting to me. I totes agree about the Syrah. I think the Syrah would be mean. I wouldn't pour that in a blind tasting class and expect people to get it. I might do it just to be mean, but I feel like that takes kind of like a knowledge of Washington State Syrah to be able to catch that in a blind tasting. The Shard surprises me. I do feel like that's pretty, like a little more obvious, but maybe I'm wrong. Getting some creme from a cherry cordial on the finish. Oh my gosh, beautiful. I love it. Beautiful. Yeah. And that again is kind of like that, like my marshmallow comment earlier, or like, I agree with you, right? There's kind of like almost like a candied fruit thing. I think Patty said jammy or compote-y. And, you know, I hesitate with those words because I think they're accurate, but I do think that they kind of scare people who would actually like the wine. Yeah. Let's see. So, okay. I'm going to answer some questions here because we're coming up on time. So I'm going to answer some outstanding questions. Favorite Walla Walla wineries? I know Kelly and Chris Cluck could definitely chime in here. And Katie Payne, I think, it definitely has more. I think they both have more experience in this area than I do. So Nathan, if you're visiting, let me know, and I'd be happy to kind of reach out to some wineries. I do love Amavi. Oh yeah, Alexander and Nicole is amazing. I love their wines. And Reininger, I love Reininger, and Chuck Reininger is amazing. And his talk of geology is like all I've ever wanted, which is not normally my thing. I'm not usually a rocks person, but Chuck makes it so interesting. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Gramercy Cellars has some really nice wine. So yeah. Okay. Now let me answer other questions. Is this a typical cab or is this specifically Walla Walla cab? This is a pretty nice typical cab. This is what really well-made cab can and should taste like. A little more warmer flavors I'm getting, like a little more riper fruit, right? Some of that stuff that we were talking about, more of that black fruit. Some folks have said cedar. For me, it's coming across as vanilla, but any of that is a little more New World, but it's I think it's a really beautiful, yes. Like I think that this is a really beautiful example of Cabernet Sauvignon. It's not like oh, this is the one-off, or yeah, this wine's good, but you know, other cab. So yeah. Lauren's asking, favorite wine is Skaya Corvina. How does this compare in terms of descriptive language? I feel like they're super different wines. For those of you who don't know the Skaya Corvina, it's from Veneto, Italy. I guess the similarities I would say are that the Corvina and this wine both have kind of black fruit flavors. So the Skaya has a lot of like kind of like tart blackberry and things like that. But that wine is all about like acidity, like it makes your mouth water. It has a little pepperiness to it, kind of brighter and kind of more in the medium body. This to me is more, definitely fuller bodied, significantly more tannin, and more kind of those baking flavors, whether you pick or woodiness, like those things. So I hope that helps. Let me know if it doesn't. So Amy, Patty, and Carrie are saying that you think this is not a typical cab. Here's what I'll say, as someone who does taste quite a bit of wine for a living. This is not a typical. Well, I guess let me back up. This is not typical California. So no, it doesn't taste like California cab because it's not. It's a different price point. When you kind of jump into the like kind of moving up above, like, I would say my threshold there would be about $25. When you kind of move to that threshold, above that threshold, it's a different, you're going to notice differences in those wines. Sometimes you're going to pay for the price or the package or the name of the winery. And sometimes you're going to get a wine that over delivers. For me, I think this wine actually over delivers. I think that this wine tastes even more expensive than it is. But if, you know, you're saying like, oh yeah, it doesn't taste like typical cab. My typical cab is, you know, Black Station, which is $10 from California. Well, yeah, no, it doesn't taste like that. So I hope that kind of helps. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to see. Oh yeah. Sleight of hand. I mean, not to say that Kelly and Chris's other suggestions aren't great, but sleight of hand is they're supposed to just be so welcoming. So again, I'm happy to help you. Yes. Yeah. Cool. And I was going to mention Alexandria Nicole has these little tiny homes on their property, and really love people to come and visit. So I don't think I've ever run over time like this. I apologize to anybody who has to skedaddle at 7 o'clock. Maybe you already did. If you didn't, thanks for sticking around. If there are lingering questions, give it a go. And someone asked if I ever take requests, and I take requests. So feel free to chat me and let me know if there's something specific that you're wondering. Because I'm definitely open to suggestions. And if you haven't looked at the March schedule, we have Slovenia coming up next week, which I'm so excited about because there were like no Slovenian wines when Table Wine opened. So I'm really excited about that, and a couple others. And then we'll have more in April. Folks are saying Black-owned wineries or BIPOC wines. I do agree. It's not going to happen anytime soon because I basically sold, not me single-handedly, but we all kind of sold out our suppliers of Black-owned wines and Black producers. So we'll have to wait for them to get supply back in. I've been doing the Black producer packs, and we've had to switch which wines are in it a couple of times just based on supply, because I think here and other shops in Wisconsin are like, oh, right, representation matters. So yes, it's a great thing. It's a great thing to sell them out, to sell them out a wine, but it's hard because I want to be promoting it, right? I'm getting, people who are saying, can you be on, the news and talk to us about it? I'm like, sure, that sounds awesome. Can you wait to air that until I have the wines back in stock? So yeah, but yes, I take it, I take the note, and I would love to maybe even do something with one of those producers so that you can kind of hear their story more than having me be the person representing them, because Other questions, thoughts? If not, wine pairings with fast food. That feels to me like maybe an Instagram post. I also might not be your ideal person because I don't eat fast food. So I can maybe make some suggestions, but that'll go on the list of the Molly gets drunk list. Maybe that should be the class. The class where Molly doesn't spit and we eat fast food. That would be amazing. Yeah, a Meet the Vintner class. I think that'd be really cool. So if you have other suggestions, I'm going to say goodnight now. If there are other suggestions, feel free to shoot me an email anytime. I'd love to hear it. I'm open to ideas. And I really appreciate y'all coming out tonight. So bye, everybody. See you soon.